You can't describe what a racist means to you.
Someone that discriminates on those grounds, that's not us.
I've given you the definition of racist.
Well, yeah.
You told me what you thought about the fact that British workers should have a superior chance of getting a job above European workers, whether they're from Eastern Europe or whatever. And that is quite simply a racist comment.
No, it isn't. It is the job of a British government, firstly, to defend the realm, and secondly, to put the interests of the people that live in this country first. She is a member of our party and has been for some years, and she works for us in our head office in London.
Do you think you should have
What
made
is your
that?
problem with her?
I have no problem with her at all. I just wondered whether you should have made that clearer on your manifesto.
So I can't really win with you, can I? On the one hand, you're saying that we are talking about a white working class in Britain, and secondly, when I tell you that working directly for me is a girl who's half Indian, you've got a problem with that too.
No, I don't have a problem. No.
I don't mind being criticised, but do make your mind up what the criticism is.
You try to turn everything into a joke. You have a campaign that says that Europeans are taking British jobs.
Yes.
You employ a German woman to work in your office.
Well,
she happens to be your wife.
Well, she employed.
Happens to spend many hundreds of thousands of British taxpayers' money. How do you justify it?
No, she doesn't. She earns a very modest salary for working extremely unsociable hours for me and being available up to 7 days a week. It's a very different situation to a mass of hundreds of thousands of people coming in and flooding the lower ends of the labour market.
So that's it. It's clear. You do not believe that any British person is capable of being the secretary of their leader.
That's nonsense, you know.
Why would you repeat those sort of inflammatory comments
Because
when
they're
more than
right.
30 people have been killed?
Because they're right.
The danger for you, I guess, is twofold. One is that it might draw the suggestion that it's out there, might draw the wrong kind of people to UKIP.
Well, the real danger is that today's our national conference, you're the BBC, your job is to be a public service broadcaster and to ask us what our policies are, what our aims are, and what the electoral difficulties are, but you don't appear to be very interested.
You happy to pick a candidate who says of immigrants, I just want to send the lot back.
She doesn't say that, and it's a complete misquote.
It's on tape. Her husband
yes, and I've
took
seen the tape, and it's a complete misquote. And she says
How can you misquote
She
on
says
tape?
it in the context of illegal immigrants, and she says that's what I'd like to say, but now I can't say it.
Well, I've seen the full quotes around it, and that's not the context of illegal. It's not illegal. She talks about the lot, all immigrants.
No, she doesn't.
Is it your view that a British government should stop the takeover of AstraZeneca?
It can't.
No, but you could change the law.
No. I'm sorry, it can't.
Who would you rather have as Prime Minister? David Cameron or Ed Miliband?
Well, we've got Jean-Claude Juncker at the moment. Our national
Just
debt.
give me an example.
No, I'm not going to. I'll tell you why. Our national debt has doubled in the last 5 years. 624,000 migrants settled in Britain last year. All you and anybody else wants to talk about is some tiddly piece of our manifesto. I'm sorry, some tiddly piece of our manifesto.
Tomorrow, you're going to be speaking, and that's when they really slashed the ticket prices to 20 and 10 quid for children. Does that suggest that you're maybe a little bit toxic?
We've slashed it from 25 quid to 20 quid. What is your point?
It seems to me that there is a kind of Farage position, a Carswell position, a Nuttall position, and they're different. They're not a cohesive position.
Well, the
for a
alternative would be
party.
Stalinism, wouldn't it?
Private Eye has reported that some of your medical bills are paid by one of the owners.
Hang on, I'm not having this.
Why not?
I'm not having libel thrown at me on, live on the radio.
But people aren't worried that
We're
the
not
Labour
having a
Party or the
debate.
Conservative Party is spreading racist propaganda.
Well, why
people
the Conservative Party got a former BNP activist standing for them in Lincolnshire? Will you ask the Conservative
Of course I
Party?
will, absolutely.
But you won't, you see, because
well,
nobody
now you're
ever
calling
does.
me a liar. And
Of
what
course
about the
people
line
do.
about we're not wanting to live next door to Romanians? It's perfectly acceptable for
I didn't
people
say
not
that.
to
I
want
was
to...
asked if a group of Romanian men moved in next door to you, would you be concerned?
What about if a group of German children did? What's the difference?
The difference, and you know what the difference
No,
is.
I honestly don't.
The question was, would you be concerned if a German family moved in or a group of Romanian men? If a group of any men moved in next door to you, you'd be concerned. But wouldn't you? So if 10 blokes move in next door, you think that's perfectly normal, would you?
Yeah.
29 million Romanian Bulgarians will be coming in when...
I didn't say will be coming, it could come.
No, Nigel, that's what you said.
Could come.
No. But that was on your poster. Talk about myths. It was a myth.
No. I'm sorry.
Nigel,
I'm sorry.
that was a myth.
Let's get this right.
So what are the benefits of the EU? You've all said the wrong things. What are the benefits? Tell us live. What are the benefits?
Well, if you're
what are the benefits? No. For people here as well, what are the benefits?
There aren't any.
We're going to get to a point in this country where your kids are facing racism. We're facing racism, facing discrimination.
We've got to get some accuracy.
This is what your party's leading people.
We need to get some accuracy here. Now, you've obviously been wound up and put into battle here under, quite a few quite serious misapprehensions. I've never worked on Wall Street. Okay, never been a stockbroker. I'm sorry to disappoint you. All right.
Your party wants to increase spending for private schools and take it away from state schools.
I don't know. Who wound you up at the back and sent you in here? I do not know, but that is simply and
I'll tell you who wound me up. You went to a private school. You worked as a stockbroker.
No, I didn't, but go on.
What did you do then?
I worked in the metals business, buying and selling lead and zinc and things like that, but go on.
These are, Holocaust deniers that you apparently signed deals with and all these things.
No, that's not true, but go on.
Don't you want to abolish the inheritance tax, which only applies to 5% of the richest 5% in the UK, which means you're clearly in favour of people who have the money to go to university, who can inherit.
Have you seen London house prices? Inheritance tax is not paid by the rich. The rich have never paid inheritance tax.
5% of the richest population.
Excuse me. The rich can avoid inheritance tax with long-term tax planning.
Do you not think that the introduction of a none of the above option would damage the UKIP vote? Because the UKIP vote is, to some extent at least, a protest vote.
No.
And none of the above is a protest vote.
That is completely wrong.
And the suggestions that in exchange for putting him forward for a peerage, you would do that if those papers support UKIP in the run-up to the election.
I never discuss any meetings I had with anybody, which is why when Douglas Carswell and then Mark Reckless defected to UKIP, they came as bolts from the blue and total surprises. I never discuss private meetings.
So you won't confirm or deny?
I never discuss private meetings.
But are you confident you'll have support from certain newspapers?
I never discuss private meetings.
Look at some of your other candidates. Alex Wood, for example, who apparently made a Nazi salute. Councillor Rob Fraser, who reportedly used a well-known racist phrase. Anna Marie Crampton, who you saw in
So when Nick Clegg comes on here,
wait
do
a minute.
you say to Nick Clegg, what about your councillor?
Let me finish this question. They were all suspended from the party.
Yeah.
Are any of those back in the party?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't run party discipline.
You should know, though, shouldn't you?
No, I lead the party. I don't micromanage every aspect of it. But I wonder when Nick Clegg comes on, do you say, well, what about your councillor, Nick, who in April was sent to prison for planting bombs?
The Tories are arguing that line, or will be arguing that line in Brussels.
No, they're not.
And Labour's got
Even if we leave the EU, it will not deliver in its entirety, in any way, a prevention of migrants coming into this country if we wish to engage in international trade and commerce and be part of a free trade area.
Well,
Nigel, what's your response to that?
I'm sorry, but that is complete and utter rubbish. Nowhere else in the world does the fact you buy and sell goods from each other free of tariffs means you have the absolute free movement of people. Absolutely nowhere else in the world, or indeed in the history of free trade deals.
Given that 50% of our exports go to EU countries, it is to EU countries. No, that's to Euro area countries. 50% to the EU, and you want to come out of the EU.
You don't?
I don't want to come out of the EU because I want to trade with people in the EU.
Switzerland is not a member of the EU. Norway is not a member of the EU. They have exactly the same terms of trade that we do.
I believe if we joined the Euro 10 years ago, actually things might have turned out differently, yes. Because I think we would have had a very... Where Nigel Farage and his United Kingdom Independence Party are deeply unpatriotic is that our soldiers fought and died in 2 world wars for peace and democracy in Europe. For peace and democracy in Europe. And what the European Union has done has consolidated peace and democracy on our continent, and it continues to do it. Certainly has.
The very fact that you, as an advocate of us becoming part of a single state, did not even know what that stood for, says to me, we're not ready yet, and maybe not for 1,000 years.
The idea they want to return to lots of nation states with capital controls and their own currencies and their own national economic policies, Nigel believes in that. I don't.
Let me just let Nigel...
Dennis, you're stuck with a big idea. You've believed in it for decades. You cannot recognise that it's gone wrong.
It is laughable that because a person has a wound, they can't do a job.
To their companies?
We have to make a decision here, don't we? Women are paid 30% less than men in the city. Why is that? And I'm suggesting it's because they make different lifestyle choices.
You're saying women who have families are discriminated against. Women who decide to have children are discriminated against.
No, they're not discriminated against. In a bottom line business, they make it harder for themselves. It's simply a statement of fact.
Well, except
I have an alternative view of the reason why women are paid 30% less in the city is because you play deliberately to all the sexist bosses out there and allow and cause this very problem. You have made the situation worse. For all the working mothers, not just in the city, you have made the situation worse.
Can I put you, are women working?
If it takes pulling out of the European Convention to sort out our human rights laws, then that should be on the table.
But that's fine, but we can't do that and stay a member of the European Union. The two are completely linked, you know that, and yet we never have that conversation. Are you saying we can leave that and stay part of the European Union?
What I'm saying, Nigel, is that we need to take a sensible approach in looking at how we sort out our relationship with the European Court and with the European Convention.
Well, they've become one and the same thing.
You also say you want to keep the flame of Thatcherism alive. I don't think that's going to serve working people in this country.
Again, you see, that was what a headline was written in a newspaper. I never said that.
So you don't think that somehow you're the heir to Mrs. Thatcher on policy, on whether it's charging for the NHS or all these other things?
The one thing that happened during the 1980s that needs to happen again is the size of the state was reduced. I think there is a very urgent need, given how indebted the Labour Party left this country and the fact the coalition have added hugely to the national debt, we've got to reduce the size of the state.
I think people can't actually deliver the welfare reform, the immigration reform, or indeed the referendum in Europe. The only thing you can do is make it slightly easier for Labour and Ed Miliband to walk into Downing Street and do exactly the opposite to those things that you're saying people should be able to come.
You know, I mean, look, the numbers suggest that is simply not true.
All right.
UKIP can't deliver those things.
Hard-working families.
Well, that's right, like immigration controls, you can't deliver those, can you? So.
The biggest lie that needs to be quashed is that there was somehow a referendum promised in a previous manifesto. That is not the case. No, okay, well, show me the page, Nigel. No, hold on a minute. We're talking about the manifesto upon which this Conservative-led government got elected. And there was no referendum in there.
2009 European elections, you said vote for us and we will guarantee you a referendum if we get into
Nigel, before you... Nigel. I'm
sorry. I think people want to pay for key NHS services, like going to see your GP, as Nigel would have you do that. I don't think people want to give the top 1% a massive tax cut. That's your manifesto. I mean, you set yourselves up as somehow the voice of working people. You would do so many things which would do unbelievable damage to my community.
Help us with the manifesto, that's very
kind. I thought you did.
The weasel lies you have heard from these three parties on this panel, and you listen to them, and they say, oh, the law needs to be changed.
It's all Europe.
This decision...
Let Nigel Farage just finish his sentence.
You are either willfully lying to these people or you're pig ignorant.
People like Nigel say things like, when I'm on a bus or a train, I feel uncomfortable, but was it awkward if I hear people speaking another language other than English? I think that's kind of ugly. So let's have a calm and rational debate. I do, actually.
Do you think,
I do. I do.
So do you not think that people coming to this country in reasonable controlled numbers, learning English and integrating and becoming part of us is not important? I think it's very, very important indeed.
He's the man who said that he feels uncomfortable hearing foreign accents on the train. He's a master. He's a master at pressing the button of fear.
You better Welsh if you want. Stephen, so do you support uncontrolled immigration? Are you happy if large sections of our towns and cities are non-English speaking? So you feel totally comfortable with that, do you?
Yeah, well, you're in
if you do,
that's
Welsh if you want. Well, I'd be happy with that. That's fine.
I don't feel uncomfortable on commuter lines, as you described, hearing foreign accents being spoken.
So you're happy with uncontrolled immigration and an open door to 500 million people?
They're bringing their skills, their talents, their work ethic, and that's a boost for our economy. What we need to address, which is exactly why we've gone down this road of the renegotiation, is to reduce this artificial draw factor that's created by having a benefit system which draws extra people to the country because they can claim benefits from day one. We want people to come and work.
Is that a boost for British workers? Is getting rid of British workers and replacing them with foreign workers or driving down the wages of existing workers? It may be good for the big multinationals, it may be good for the type of people that fund the Conservative Party, but is it good for British workers and families? I don't think it is.
This is not a political project.
This
is not about it. I don't want a united states of Europe.
Everybody in Europe that wants it wants a state of Europe.
For Nigel to say we need to be internationalists and think beyond Europe, the way you get into China and India and America is through Europe.
No, it is not.
It is a big trading bloc. and to turn our back on that is the Little England rhetoric, which will bring us towards poverty in the long run. So Europe is our way into and through the world, and we need to reform.
I'm sorry. We cannot have this. Now, when this referendum comes,
we can have this.
When this referendum comes, the entire political class will tell you that we're better off inside the EU because it gives us more clout on the world stage. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth.
As a so-called career politician, I think Nigel fits that bill much better than I do.
Oh, please. How on earth do you get to that?
Well, I mean, you've been a member of the European Parliament, you've changed parties. I mean, you can argue
I spent 20 years in business. Did Ed Miliband spend 20 years in business? He didn't spend 6 weeks in business, did he? I mean, come on. I mean, really?
That's the sort of petty political point scoring that I think the questioner
No, that's fundamental.
He is a pound shop Enoch Powell, and we got to watch him.
Well, Russell, that's all well and good, and you've got your point of view. The question was, is Britain overcrowded? And do you think I'm wrong? I mean, do you not think?
Nigel, can I not be more clear, mate? I think you're wrong. I come from the kind of community.
This is called Question Time, this programme, right? And
well, tonight you could have another
And what happens is, members of the audience ask questions, and we're expected to answer them. You haven't answered this lady's question.
He's a racist scumbag trying to blame immigrants for the cutbacks because of his rich.
Russell, you've got some voters here, mate. You ought to stand. I mean, these are your voters. They're lovely people, aren't they?
Let the Europeans get on with saving their single currency, with doing what they have to do. But this does not mean that Britain has to leave the European Union.
But they can't save their single currency. It's a doomed project. The north and south of Europe cannot fit together and survive together inside the same economic and monetary union. Had it been Germany and a few of the northern countries, it might have worked. But this is doomed.
I've always been a politician, and the appointment as a commissioner is a political appointment and not a bureaucratic one.
Thank you.
Well, we weren't elected, were you?
Oh, I'm discriminatory, sexist, racist. I was a banker.
Yes.
Was I a banker?
Well, no, you were a stockbroker.
No, I wasn't.
You were a stockbroker.
No, you haven't even got your facts right, mate.
You're selling metals. I see.
You haven't even got your facts right.
You got Johnny Rockard with you today.
So what's he done wrong?
What's he done wrong?
Yes.
He's a disgusting person that shouldn't be fielding for a political
Why is
seat.
that?
Why is that?
Yeah, tell me.
Because he's a disgusting kind of man with no moral. He's got no moral.
Oh.
What, you think it's all right? You think it's all right for a porn star?
Are you a Cromwellian Puritan?
Do you think it's? No, I'm not. Do you think it's all right for a porn star to stand for election?
He's done nothing illegal.
We're
a party that believes live and let live. Be happy, everybody. Let's have some fun.
You haven't even got to say, you can't shake your head yet. Bans us
I don't agree
from
with you about
making
locking
our
us
own
into political
trade
union.
deals.
That's not true
Our
either.
own trade deals. Well, we're in a political union. That's why it has a flag and an anthem.
Do you want us to be a member of the single market?
No.
You don't?
No.
So you want us to be... You don't even want Norway's status? No. So you want us to be a country completely alone in all the world?
Alone. Wouldn't that be awful? Independence, the word.
What do these guys offer to the voters at home if we vote to leave?
Well, thank you.
What do people get?
Well,
what will they get on
if we
June
stay
the
in,
24th?
If we stay in,
or will they leave?
We stay in a club that is centralising at a rapid pace. We stay in a club which Turkey's joining within 5 years, if the German Chancellor gets her way. If we leave, do you know the one thing I can absolutely guarantee you, if we leave, is that building behind us and this nation will be self-governing. I think what's really interesting...
Tell us what out looks like.
Well, he's the interviewer. I think what's really interesting is actually there are probably more divisions and enmities within the Remain campaign. Anyway, this policy, as soon as you invoke Article 50, all the trade deals and everything you have today stay in place.
No, they don't.
And
they're suspended.
It sounds like
no,
they're not. Right, no. If we're going to have this argument, you mustn't lie.
So you rather like Vladimir Putin?
No, I don't at all. I can't stand him.
I thought you admired him.
But I don't want to go to war with him.
I
don't want to go. I said I wouldn't want to live in Russia.
You said
but
you admired
compared to the pygmies who wanted to take us to war in Syria, I thought he was a head and shoulders above the rest.
We see our farmers who rely on subsidies from the European Union and access to the European market to make a living. There would be no living for farmers in Wales without that.
Carwyn's idea that without EU money, all farming in Wales would cease is ludicrous. I mean, farming wasn't invented here in 1975. If a few £100 million a year comes into Wales as part of Objective 1 funding, contrast that...
6 billion.
Contrast... Oh, please don't.
2006, 6 billion.
That's just laughable. Let's keep it sane.
You want to withdraw from the security cooperation that we have that enables us to arrest people who flee to other countries, and so you want to withdraw from that cooperation. How will you know they've got criminal records?
I want to stop foreign terrorists coming into Britain in unlimited numbers. You're absolutely right.
So are you saying the CBI are wrong?
The CBI is a very interesting case. They've been wrong about everything since the gold standard in 1929.
The only reason why we haven't got a trade agreement with between the EU and India is because Britain keeps blocking it, and they're blocking it because it would mean more migration from India.
Alan, you clearly know next to nothing about how trade deals work. Nowhere else, anywhere in the world, do trade deals involve the free movement of people only inside the European Union.
Nigel, do you seriously think we can strike a better trade deal with a superpower like China representing 60 million as opposed to 500 million? It makes no sense.
Yes, no, Nick, we do.
Hold that point. We're going to bring in Georgia.
I'm sorry.
We are going to bring in Georgia from the audience.
I'm sorry.
Georgia,
Nick,
where are you?
I can't let that go. I know it's
Come on,
half the
Georgia.
pantomime
You need
season,
to cut in on Nigel.
but oh no, you don't. Nick, you talked about doing a trade deal with China. Iceland has a population of 1/3 They've got a trade deal with China, and the European Union hasn't managed to do it. If Iceland's big enough, we're big enough.
Norway, often held up as the great paragon of greater independence and taking control of their own affairs, have catastrophically lost control and real sovereignty over their own affairs because they're not at the table where those rules are being drafted.
Once again, Nick is telling you a complete pack of lies about Norway and their deal, but he's good at that. He's done it for a living for years. What I would say, I mean, we're being told, wouldn't it be dreadful to be like Norway? How ghastly. Can you imagine being rich and independent and happy?
Why is it the Norwegian government have said, Britain, you shouldn't follow our example? Why do you think that is?
Shall I tell you why that is, Nick?
Why is that?
Shall I tell you why that is? Because just like you, and just like
they're lying as well, are they?
in this country,
So the Norwegians
who voted no to the European Union were betrayed by their own political class and signed up to the single market.
All a betrayal,
and it shows the danger of trusting people like you.
There are almost as many Brits living, studying, working in Europe as there are Europeans coming here. Why would we deprive them of that freedom?
Nigel, what happens to Brits abroad?
Nick, can we please stop lying? Why do you do this? Why do you do this?
What happens to the Brits in Spain, Nigel?
You know, there are 4 million. There are 4 million EU citizens living in this, including my wife, living in this country, and living full-time in the rest of Europe, excluding Ireland, fewer than 750,000. Can we please at least argue on the basis of the fact? I think that NATO and our relationship with America is threatened by EU military.
The bigger danger is Putin. The bigger danger is Putin. The much bigger danger of this fantasy fear of a Euro army
says it every
is Vladimir
week,
Putin.
What
does Vladimir Putin want?
Stop lying to people about this. You lied in 14 and you're lying again. They want a European army, and that's a fact.
It says here that 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians may come to this country. There aren't even 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians living in Romania and Bulgaria.
You try to do trickery with 29 million, saying there aren't 29. You know why? Because 2 million have left already, and they've gone to Italy and to Spain. I'm not claiming 29 million people have the right to come to Britain. I'm claiming 485 million people have the total unconditional right to come to this country if they want to.
The House of Commons has shown that roughly 7% of all new laws are related to the European Union.
Oh dear, oh dear.
You've used some seconds up. I'd hurry up if I were you.
7%? What are you on about?
7% of our primary law is derives from the European Union.
Oh,
the reality is the bureaucracy is no bigger. There's people employed by Derbyshire County Council.
I'm sorry. I said yes to these debates. I thought you would honestly make the pro-EU case. By saying 7% of our laws are made in Brussels, you are willfully lying to the British people about the extent to which we have given away control of our country and our democracy. And I'm really shocked and surprised that you would try and do that.
I don't think in a debate like this, Nigel Farage, you should start making things up to make a point.
Well, you've done rather well at it so far.
are, Nick, haven't you?
I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel Farage soon tells us that the moon landing was a fake, that Barack Obama isn't American, that Elvis isn't dead. You know, it is not going to happen. Stop.
Why do you deny
He claimed last week. He claimed last week that 485 million people were going to vacate the whole of the rest of the European continent and turn up in Britain.
You're saying that I said 485 million people would come to Britain. I didn't. I said they were able to. You came up with the most twisted trade figure I've ever heard. And last week you even said, you tried to tell the British people that only 7% of our national laws emanate in the European Union.
That is true. It's a guarantee now in law that when the rules change, when new powers are given up to the European Union, there must, and there will be a referendum.
But the trouble is, Nick, nobody believes you.
Make sure that people who do come here, for instance, speak the language. I agree, we must make sure.
How are you going to do that? That would be against European Union rules. You can't do that. You haven't got this power.
Yes,
you haven't got this control.
Yes, we do.
I would be all for, Nick, an immigration policy based on people speaking English, having skills, and being law-abiding citizens. We do not have that power as members of the European Union, and that's the truth of it.
Nigel Farage says he admires the way that Vladimir Putin has played as if it's a game.
I don't admire Putin. What I said was he'd outwitted and outclassed you all over Syria. Joan's question is, how do you control immigration as an EU member? Be honest with people.
Well,
we can't.
And what you say,
tell them the truth.
Well, I will tell exactly the truth, which is that the freedom to move around the European Union should not be the same as the freedom to claim.
That's irrelevant.
Yes, it is not
irrelevant. This is not about benefits. It's about movement of people.
But your problem is you seem to imply anyone who's foreign who comes to this country is a menace. We simply can't, as a country, we must remain generous-spirited and open-minded to the rest of the world.
You won't admit the truth, will you? The truth is, there's nothing we can do. You can come into Britain from anywhere in the world and get diagnosed with HIV and get the retroviral drugs that cost up to £25,000 per year per patient. I know there are some horrible things happening in many parts of the world, but what we need to do is to put the National Health Service there for British people and families who in many cases have paid into this system for decades.
Thank you. Leanne Wood. This kind of scaremongering rhetoric is dangerous.
It's a fact.
It's dangerous, it divides communities and it creates stigma to people who are ill, and I think you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Well, I'm sorry, we've got to put our own people first.
I've sat around that table in Europe and negotiated for Britain. You can get things done, and I've set out what I want to get done so that we can sort out this immigration issue once and for all.
But Mrs. Merkel, who is the real boss in Europe, as we all know, has made it perfectly clear you can negotiate lots of things over the next couple of years, but you cannot renegotiate the free movement of peoples within the European Union, and that is backed up by the Commission President and the President of the European Council and the overwhelming majority of the European Parliament. Do you accept or not that in your renegotiation, free movement is not up for discussion?
I don't accept that. Nigel is basically saying, give up before you've begun. In fact, if you look at my track record on Europe, I said...
I have. There just seems to be a total lack of comprehension on this panel, and indeed amongst this audience, which is a remarkable audience, even by the left-wing standards of the BBC. I mean, this lot's pretty left-wing.
Hang on a second.
But very interesting.
Hang on a second.
When you talk
Nigel,
about
let
housing,
me just say one thing.
Yeah.
This is an audience that has been carefully chosen, not
Very
by the
carefully.
BBC.
His sums don't add up.
Well, our sums do add up, and very interestingly, Ed, we're the first political party in the history of this country to have had our manifesto promises independently verified by an economic think tank. You obviously haven't read the manifesto, you should.
You don't want the National Health Service. You want a private insurance system of healthcare.
Stop lying. UKIP believes in the National Health Service, free at the point of delivery. Could I get any recognition from any of you that the demand side of this equation is that a rapidly rising population due to open-door immigration, started by Ed Miliband's Labour Party in the late 1990s, has directly contributed towards the housing crisis. Is there any flicker of recognition from any of you? Please, one of you, have a go, please.
We have a housing shortage across this country. But you know what, Nigel Farage? It's not caused by immigrants. In your world, every problem is caused by immigrants. We need to...
It's just astonishing. I mean, if you cannot if you are not worldly enough to accept there is a demand supply side to this equation, then I'm very sorry.
I want to come back.
I'm very sorry.
I accept demand and supply. I simply don't accept that all of the demand bit of it is down to immigrants.
When the population goes up, when the population goes up, there is more demand for houses. It's not difficult, really.
Nigel, your whole life and career has been about banking, has about being cutting working class rights and living standards.
He's never been a banker.
and you put yourself up as some kind of populist. Come on, Nigel.
I'm sorry, Jeremy. I've never worked in a bank. I'm sorry. You've got your little image.
And remind me how many elected representatives you have in Scotland?
Absolutely none, but rather more than the BBC do. And, we could have had this interview in England a couple of years, although I wouldn't have met with such hatred as I'm getting from your questions. And frankly, I've had enough of this interview. Goodbye.